Man, this is a good show. I can't wait to discuss today's episode. Now, usually I do the top 6 moments of each episode of House of the Dragon, just as I did with Game of Thrones. But that's because there are usually multiple storylines going at once per episode. But with episode 4, it's all one story. It's a tale of 2 maids, one who follows the rules and one who does not. And that makes all the difference for each of them and for their relationship. So let's break down this pivotal moment in the House of the Dragon storyline. And I would be curious to know going forward which method you would prefer for my coverage. The top 6 moments for House of the Dragon, or do you like this type of breakdown instead? The top 6 moments just really didn't lend itself to this episode because, as I said, it's all one story this week. So there might be no dragons in this episode except for Daemon's flirty drive-by, but we see a different kind of dragon riding. There are 3 sex scenes this episode, in fact, an activity that turns out to be just as dangerous with huge consequences, and certainly another way to play the Game of Thrones. When I first watched episode 4, I was blinded by all the sex scenes. I was like, whoa, this show really went from 0 to like 120 just like that. But on my second watch to do my notes for this breakdown, I was like, wow, this episode is actually really well written and directed. And I'm excited to break it down with you. There's just so much going on. I guess the character is a little blinded by all the sex going on as well. But stuff is happening. Oh, stuff is happening that will forever alter the course of their lives and their families or houses. All right, so it's been 1 year since the last episode, and that makes 4 since Daemon and Rhaenyra have seen each other. And as she gets older and sees her other options, Rhaenyra finds herself thinking more and more of her dear uncle, caressing, and I used a very PG term for this, caressing the necklace he gifted her. By the way, during the bachelorette scene that kicks off this episode, Samwell Blackwood killing that other dude is actually from the source material. It happened in the books, and his collar also clearly references House Blackwood. This is the kind of detail that has won Game of Thrones its core devoted fan base, and it also points out how much the source material helps this franchise with a detailed roadmap, with even little things. It even gives them the gifts of little bon mots, right? I mean, stray from that roadmap at your own risk. Although Benioff and Weiss have the defense that the roadmap stopped because George R.R. Martin has stopped writing. He still hasn't finished the story. But maybe he should have been more involved in the way Game of Thrones ended. But yes, it's a tremendous safety net for this show. Now, as I said, Alicent plays by the rules, Rhaenyra does not, and throughout this episode, we see them compared, their scenes intercut to contrast them, and it's really well done. Now, Alicent is a lady of the court, married as one should, and succeeded wildly in doing so thanks to her father becoming queen of the land. And now, Alicent and Viserys, she's working with her new husband to find a similar good match for Rhaenyra, the future queen. Alicent is still very naive, very innocent, which I think Rhaenyra is also to some degree. Both these, that's another way that they're actually alike. These 2 characters are still quite young, and they're forced to, have machinations above their age range because I guess of the short lifespans of medieval times. But it's very interesting indeed. Now, Rhaenyra is still a bundle of emotion. Not only is she still convinced that her father will forsake her and name her her half-brother Aegon his heir instead of her, even after he just assured her that he would not. He's assured her several times he will not, but she just doesn't believe him. But also she's haunted by the death of her mother, a lady who followed the rules and died, as Rhaenyra so indelicately puts it, to Alicent, who's doing the exact same thing. And also, I think, now that I think about it, to some degree, inadvertently warns Alicent not to just sit there either, but a prisoner in a castle squeezing out heirs. And Alicent's like, wait a minute, that's me. Maybe it shouldn't be me either. I think because Rhaenyra, again, is doing such adult things and is played by an actress who is an adult, it's easy to forget that her character is not an adult. And besides being tripped up by her own teenage angst, in this episode in particular, she's being manipulated by someone who is an adult, and that's her uncle Damon. Damon knows exactly what he's doing during this episode. I didn't even see it fully the first time. He got me too. But the second time around, I was like, Damon, you creep. All right, so he's still very charismatic. But although I have to say, Paddy Considine is like a superstar on this show. We like to laugh at him, but I believe he will probably get the acting wins from what I've seen so far for this show. So Damon first does the drive-by of Rhaenyra's ship. Then he makes all nice with his brother, her father, painting himself the good guy again. Was that crown made of human bone, by the way? Yuck. And it didn't even look good. I was like, maybe you should have left some skin on it. Maybe that crown should have been given Viserys the finger. That would have been hilarious. Maybe those were finger bones. But anyway, I did like when he said, add this sword to the chair. And he called it a chair. That was pretty cool. And it was funny. I was like, Damon, you scamp. You are very charismatic. Then he started playing hard to get with Rhaenyra. She's like, oh, uncle, why did you decide to come home? And he's like, oh, I missed everybody. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, but don't stray too far from her so she follows. But then also at the same time, he tells a career-oriented woman like Rhaenyra that she's missing out on life and shouldn't be so strict. I'm sure a couple of you have heard that line before, right? Then he sneaks her out of the Red Keep, telling her about a secret passage in her room. What kind of self-respecting father didn't have that sealed up? You would think more. No one seemed to know about that. Ser Criston Cole didn't know about it. He's a little naive too. But what about his superiors? Also, how long was Damon waiting at the stairs for her to come? He was like, how long is it going to take her to find? I can tell you that if this was me, I would have totally missed that paper until like a few days later and been like, oh no. I'd be like, who left their dirty laundry in my room? Get rid of this, Ser Criston. But I thought it was funny the way he was just so coolly waiting there. I guess he heard her footsteps in the near distance and was like, all right, time to get my smolder on. But that was very funny. So he allows her to dress. Now, he could have given her the clothes of an ordinary young woman, but he decided to allow her to dress up as a young boy. I think affording her the type of freedom that she's not only longed for, but to a degree that she had not even imagined. So she got to be truly free, walking outside of the confines of the palace, aka the Red Keep. Then he takes her to a show where it's made to seem it's a comedy show, but it's funny because it's true. Like, he took her to a show. I mean, they could have walked down on that show. They could have been like, this show sucks. But instead, he was like, listen to what they're saying, Rhaenyra. They'll never accept you as queen. So your ambitions are pointless. So you might as well have sex with me. Right? He's like, you're not experiencing the joys of life for nothing. You're not even going to get this. By the way, when they were walking around, it reminded me very much of that Aladdin and Jasmine scene, right? But of course, instead of visiting, the town square, they go to the seedy portion of the Vegas Strip. Then he takes her to a brothel and gets her in the mood by being like, watch this orgy, before making his own move. I don't know why that was the special sex room of the orgy. That wasn't even a private room. I was like, it seems people are having sex everywhere in this building. I'm surprised that they didn't cover up their hair once they were in the brothel, which again makes me feel that was part of Damon's plan. Although Rhaenyra should have been smarter. I mean, their hair is very obvious and, gives them away. But so when I watched the episode the first time, I was like, why does he lose interest? Why does he walk away? Why does he not seal the deal after he went through so much trouble to make it happen? Well, I believe it's because when he's looking down at her and she looks up at him so innocently and with love. It might just be a schoolgirl crush, but it's love. And it was sweet to see them holding hands in that one shot. I thought that was very nice. So I think that he just can't do it to her because his intentions are not innocent. He is really no different than her other suitors, angling to get her throne through her. He just, has a more direct route. But he can't go through with it because I think he does also have feelings for her. And, not so much so that he couldn't, instigate this plan, but he can't see it through. However, when he's confronted by his brother the next morning, he's like, well, the plan's already in motion. So he doesn't admit that he couldn't go through with it. He makes it seem like he did. And he makes his play anyway. And he says, hey, if Rhaenyra is ruined, right, let me have her. And I think that he would, with the feeling that he would go on to be king consort, and I'm sure, continuing to play the Game of Thrones, eventually become the king outright. I still don't trust Daemon entirely. But lucky for Rhaenyra, Viserys doesn't give Daemon what he wants and sends his brother back to the wife that he already has. I like when he's like, "You're already married," and he really hates her though. Back at the Vale, Viserys, I think, is actually a pretty good dad. In his talk with Rhaenyra after, he's harsh with her, but I think respectful, truly treating her like the next in line for the throne. He had the script writing for Viserys, by the way, was particularly good this episode. He's like, he says, "The truth doesn't matter, only perception." And I'm like, but preach on it, Viserys. Then she's like, "Oh, Dad, it's so unfair. If I were a man." And he's like, "But you're not a man." And I'm like, "Yep, more truth." And then when he says, "You're marrying Rhaenyra Valerian," she's like, "So I can be a remedy for your political headaches?" And then without missing a beat, he says, "You are my political headache." And I was like, damn, that was excellent. I was like, you're getting a little sharper there, Viserys. So yes, he's telling her she's marrying Rhaenyra Valerian, and you'll soon find out why Rhaenyra's late night dalliances don't really matter in that scenario. It's actually a really good match, and I'm excited for next week. So what does all this have to do with Alicent? Well, I was going to say she kind of stuck herself in the middle of it, but because of her father, who also put her in the middle of it, she is in the middle of it. So she is stuck, we see, having passionless sex with Viserys. He's got a lot of sores on his back at this point. I'd be like, are those contagious? But I don't trust their doctors anyway, so who knows? And then there's rats on the top of the bed. Whew! She's queen. She should be like, take care of this rat problem. It was also, I felt kind of bad for Viserys when he was like, he kind of had to look at Alicent during his bath and be like, "Maybe you want to do this?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, everybody leave us." I was like, she's just not that into you, Viserys. She's kind of into him. I don't know. I feel bad. I don't really know if there's a good option for Viserys, because I'm about to advocate for their relationship, actually. They're both nice people. I mean, I think that in this kind of day and age, maybe that's the best that Viserys can hope for. She could try a little harder, though. But anyway, her bestie, meanwhile, as they show on the show, is having nothing but passionate affairs. Although, the grass is always greener on the other side, because, Rhaenyra, it's actually not working out that great for her either. All right, by the way, also, nice cut from the orgy tapestries in Alicent's bedroom. Who did that decorating? I don't think it was Alicent. To the real-life orgy that Rhaenyra attends, right? Like a fake versus real situation. But when it becomes known that Damon and Rhaenyra were together, who did it, by the way? That kid spy worked for Mysaria. I noticed that on the second watch. I was like, oh, it's the same kid. So she's telling Damon that she's his protector, but shades of Littlefinger here. Shades of Littlefinger. She turned him in. And Otto Hightower, I did not envy Otto Hightower this episode. He is stuck delivering the news that no father wants to hear. And Alicent makes the fateful decision to back Rhaenyra, choosing to believe her when Rhaenyra says Daemon never even touched her. Ooh, step too far, Rhaenyra. And she even swears on her mother, who of course died horribly. And it just shows how serious the situation is, that Rhaenyra has to fight tooth and nail to protect her reputation. So yes, Alicent chooses Rhaenyra, while Rhaenyra not only chooses herself, but when agreeing to marry Rhaenyra Valerian, she gets out one strike, and she gets vengeance where she can against the person who created this problem for her, Otto Hightower, who was unfortunately the messenger in this scenario, although it really was Mysaria who did it to her. But anyway, she says, you got to fire Otto Hightower because he's Aegon's, my half-brother's grandfather, so he's too self-interested to give you impartial counsel. And I think to a degree that's true, but I don't really know if you could hold that against Otto Hightower. So here are my thoughts on Otto Hightower. Is he self-interested? Of course he is. As Viserys points out, everyone's self-interested. And I think Otto Hightower, really for the most part, was a very good hand up until the end. But here's the problem for Rhaenyra. While he's on Viserys' side, he, of course, is on Alicent and his own bloodline side over Rhaenyra. And even beyond his own bloodline, because of the times, I think, Otto Hightower knows that a male heir would go down easier with the hoi polloi and also the other houses. So he and his daughter were able to deliver what was needed. So it's like, hey, hate the game, not the player. But they are playing the game. Now, did Viserys accuse Otto Hightower of killing his father? That story was hard to follow. But if Viserys truly believed that, why would he have ever kept Otto around at all? Maybe it makes him feel a little better about firing Otto Hightower. And while sure, Otto sent his daughter to comfort Viserys when he was in mourning, How is Viserys only now realizing such an obvious move? And also, if I were Otto Hightower, I'd be like, Your Majesty, you needed to marry somebody. My daughter's very nice. You seemed pretty happy with the arrangement back then, and still to this day. So what's the problem? And she's been an excellent wife. I think Alicent, even though she might not be so into Viserys, she has worked very hard to support him and to give him good advice. And up until now, she has been playing the Game of Thrones on her own behalf, but has really been also at the service of her husband and king. So I don't really think it was that malicious, to be honest with you. I think it would benefit anyone that he decided to marry in that house. So you could accuse anyone who got the good fortune of their house delivering the queen to have a problem. But then also, I do understand, it's just an unfortunate situation. I do understand why Rhaenyra wanted to get rid of Hightower, because, he's obviously working against her, not only for his own best interest, but also because he honestly feels it's what's in the best interest of the crown. However, on Rhaenyra's part, she's not thinking through the ramifications. She basically, Alicent just set her up to help her, and then Rhaenyra basically just dunked on her. I mean, that's really bad. It's humiliating. She got the queen's father fired, and she made the queen partially responsible. All because Rhaenyra was extremely careless. This is a lot of Rhaenyra's fault. And in trying to clean up the mess, she didn't care that Alicent and Alicent's father were severely damaged. And this is a key moment in this story. Also an important moment this episode is that Rhaenyra, left all hot and bothered by Damon, decided to seduce Ser Criston Cole rather than take a cold shower. This scene was tough to watch, but an interesting flipping around of sexual harassment, because here, Ser Criston Cole pretty clearly said no. I mean, he technically said stop, but he did not want to do that. And he had, I'm sure some people will, like in many of these situations, argue, oh, he really wanted it deep down. He was really reluctant. He knew it was a bad idea, and on several instances, he looked not happy. And so it was a really bad idea for Rhaenyra to push that. And just you wait till you find out how bad an idea it really was. And wow, some of you might be like, spoilers, Grace. Trust me, you are not going to see where this is going unless you've read the books. And then it's not a spoiler because you've read the books. But also that armor that he has, they built in like this rounded front to it, and it really adds a lot of heft to the King's Guard, because when he took it off, he looked like he never fought a day in his life. I'd be like, where'd the knight go, and where did this artist of the castle come from? I'm surprised nobody brought that up. I'm like, he's supposed to be the only one who has combat experience, and he doesn't have a single scar. That was interesting. The episode ends with Rhaenyra being brought a special tea to deal with any consequences from her coupling. Now, not only does that show that her father doesn't truly believe her, he's like, okay, Rhaenyra, but drink this just in case. But it also, I think, shows the serious ramifications of her actions, not to mention endangering herself politically because of not only her reputation, but potentially producing someone with a claim to the throne going forward. But then also endangering her own health. I mean, who would trust that guy to mix the tea just right? He was like, sometimes it might not work, sometimes it might kill you or have some really bad consequences, but I'm pretty sure I did it right. And you're like, aren't you responsible for killing her mother? And then, of course, if she was pregnant, it wouldn't be Daemon's baby she was getting rid of, but Ser Criston's. Perhaps something that didn't occur to her in her moment of passion or sexual harassment. And she's like, I did not think of how that could really become a problem for me. So as you can see, even when it's mostly about sex instead of dragons, we are still very much playing the Game of Thrones. And again, this was a pivotal moment in this story. All right, so what did you think of tonight's episode? Share your thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.